Getting to your first £100,000 invested is undoubtedly a tough challenge. It takes time. It takes small contributions over long periods of time to get to where you want to go. If you feel like it's taking a long time, you're struggling, your net worth doesn't seem to be moving too much, you're not alone. At a Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting back in 1990, Charlie Munger uttered a quote that has since become pretty famous in the investing community. During the meeting, a young man stood up, probably a similar age to me and you watching this video, and he said that he was struggling to get started. His net worth wasn't growing as fast as he would like. And it was at that point Charlie answered with his famous answer. He said, "The first 100,000 is a bitch, but you have to do it." He then goes on to say, "I don't care what you have to do. If that means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on £100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas a little bit." Well, I just reached my first £100,000 in my portfolio, and I can confirm that yes, it was a bitch. It took about 8 years to get here. However, I'm now starting to see those benefits of compound interest paying off. I can see how that next £100,000 is going to happen in a much faster time frame than the initial 100,000. So in this video, I'm going to explain why that first £100,000 is so hard to get for everyone and why it gets so much easier after that. We're actually going to take a look at the math behind it and explain exactly how it works. First up, why is that £100,000 so hard initially? The main reason that the first £100,000 is so hard is because most of that money is going to come from your own contributions. Compound interest doesn't really start to kick in until those later years. If you invest £10,000 at a 7% interest rate, it will take you 7.84 years to reach that £100,000 mark. Over those 8 years, £76,000 will come from your own contributions and the rest will come from gains in the stock market. But that is only if you're getting an average of 7% per year. That 7, 8, 9% figure that you hear people talking about is over a period of 30, 40, 50 years. It's hard to really say what sort of gains or even losses you might have in a 3, 5, or 8 year period. So chances are in that initial investment period, you might not get gains as high as 7%. If that's the case, at a 4% interest rate, approximately 84,000 or so would come from your own contributions, with 16,000 coming from interest. So depending on when you get into the market, most of that money from the initial 100,000 is coming from you. It's not coming from market gains. That's why personally I would focus my time on getting as much money into my portfolio as possible rather than trying to get an extra couple of percent gains. It just doesn't matter in those early days. The main thing is building the pot. There's also another factor at play when you get started that makes it hard to reach that initial 100,000. And that is quite simply that you're probably young. You're not at the peak earnings in your career yet. You have time to go and you're going to get there. But the money you have right now is not the most that you're going to ever have, so you're going to have less to put into the market. Now, I think you should be putting in as much as you possibly can at this early age, but you probably will likely be able to contribute more in the future. So that first 100,000 again is just simply going to be harder because of that. So now we know why it's harder to get to that first 100K. Let's take a look at the math behind why the second, third, and 10th 100,000 that you make in your portfolio is just so much easier. Once you reach £100,000 invested, compound interest really starts to make a difference. Now, when you have £100,000 and you get a 7 to 10% return per year, you're starting to get £7,000, £10,000 increase in your portfolio value every single year, just passively, not including your own contributions that you're making. If you're earning a median salary of £33,000 per year, that's a significant chunk of your income that you've simply been able to make through investments passively. So let's take a look at this chart on the screen right now. As you can see from it, it's going to take you just under 8 years to reach your first £100,000 investing 10K per year at a 7% return. If you then continue to invest the same amount at the same return, you'll be able to get your next 100K in only 5.1 years. That is nearly 2.5 years quicker than your first 100K. You're starting to see that snowball effect start working. It continues to get faster and faster as compound interest makes up more and more of your gains. Going from 200 to 300K takes less than 4 years, and 400 to 500K only takes 2.5 years. During these periods, you aren't contributing any more money than you did previously. You're just benefiting from compound interest, and the money that you invested earlier, years before, is really starting to get to work. On the road to hitting a $1 million portfolio, it will take 7.84 years to reach that initial 100,000, but to go from 600,000 to $1 million, that's only going to take you 6.34 years. So the £400,000 you're making there at the end of your portfolio journey is only going to take you 6.84 years, which is less time than it took you to get to your initial 100K. So this just shows you how powerful compound interest is as time goes on. And that's why it's so important to get that first 100K invested. So how can you go about doing that? First, I think it's important to realize that your investment returns in those first 8 years or so really don't matter all of that much. If you look at the chart below, you can see the impact that a different interest rate has on your journey to get to £100,000. For example, at a 3% rate of return, it'll take you about 8.88 years to get to 100K investing 10K per year. If you go ahead and you get a 9% return, which that's an astronomical difference right there in rate of returns, it's still going to take you 7.45 years. So it's going to take you 7 to 8 years anyway, no matter how good your rate of return. So I wouldn't waste your time focusing on trying to pick individual stocks, trying to invest in the next hot thing. Simply invest your money in an index fund and focus on earning more money, because the contributions at this time are so much more important than the actual rate of return that you're getting. In my opinion, what I invest in is index funds. I invest mostly in this one right here. I made a video on it recently. It's called the Fidelity Index World, and it invests in about 70% United States, 30% international stocks, and I put most of my money in there each month and watch it grow. I like a pretty passive investing strategy. This means that investing is really taking up no space in your head and no time out of your weeks and months. You can simply focus on building high value skills that allow you to go ahead and make more money. That could simply be trying to get promoted in your job, going for a new job, starting a side hustle, whatever it is, you want to make as much as you possibly can. You also want to minimize your expenses. In your 20s, you can live pretty much like crap and nobody cares. Everyone's living like crap anyway. They're young, they're figuring things out. You can live with your parents, you can drive a crappy car, and no one bats an eyelid. This is not the time to go buying expensive things that are going to take more from you than they give to you. Nobody cares about the car you drive. Invest that money. Get to that £100,000 mark. And if you can do it before 30, you can actually just simply coast your way to retirement. If you invest £100,000 by 30, you can have 1.6 million in retirement without ever contributing to that portfolio again at an 8% return. I wouldn't recommend not contributing to your portfolio after 30, but it just shows you the benefit of getting started so young. Be frugal. People talk about like, oh, what is not buying a coffee going to do for me? But if you see a £5 a day, that's £150 per month. That is a significant chunk of money. And I think buying the £5 coffee says more about your spending in general than just that coffee. If you're doing that, there's probably other areas of expenses that you're claiming you're not willing to cut back on, but they're not actually benefiting your life that much. And you can drink as many Starbucks as you want whenever you hit the £100,000 mark, and the compound interest is doing that work for you. But until then, I would be pushing as hard as I could to get to that point. Now, obviously, still live your life. You can never be 20 again. You should still go out there and have fun, but you should be intentional about what you're spending your money on. When you're being intentional about the money that you spend, you should probably have a budget. And if you don't have one, you want to get mine down below for free in the description. It's a Google Sheet that is going to track all of your finances on a monthly basis. You can track your income, expenses, etc., etc. You can see it on the screen right now. I'd recommend checking it out down below for free if you do want it. Experience is great, but things that are going to give you a liability, like purchasing a £400 a month car, that's kind of silly. Drive a 2, 3, 4 grand car, just buy it in cash and invest the rest of that money coming in. Don't go buy that expensive house 3 or 4 years earlier than you need to. Stay with your parents if you can and invest huge amounts of money when you have no bills. That is going to get you to that £100,000 mark as fast as possible. So if you're ready to start investing your way to your first £100,000, why not start with a free stock from Trading 212? If you sign up through my link in the description, you can get a free stock worth up to £100. Of course, as always, capital is at risk when you are investing. You can check out that link below in the description. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, like this one if you did. And if you want to see how I reached £100,000 by the age of 26, make sure and check out this video right here.